Tonight you're in a quiet Boston brownstone, with early winter snow drifting past the tall windows and a soft radiator hiss in the corner. This is a calm city sleep story for adults, told in a low, steady voice to keep you company as you drift toward rest. Snow is drifting down over the city in small, steady flakes, the kind that fall without any hurry. It gathers in a pale layer along the brownstone steps, softening the hard edges of the railings and the curb. Your breath touches the cold air and turns visible, a small cloud that fades as soon as you move through it. Overhead, the streetlight makes the falling snow glow, and the windows along the block hold pockets of warm, amber light. You stand for a moment at the base of the steps, gloved hand resting on the iron railing, feeling the faint chill of metal through the fabric. The day behind you feels like it belongs to another room, another time. Out here, it's quiet enough that you can hear the whisper of flakes landing on your coat and the distant hiss of traffic on a slushy avenue. You take a slow breath in through your nose, cool and clean, and let it ease out in a long, comfortable sigh. Step by step, you climb the snowy stairs, boots leaving clear prints that will soften and blur before morning. The building's entry light hums overhead, steady and uncomplicated. When you reach the top, you brush a bit of snow from your sleeve, slide your key into the lock, and push open the heavy front door. The hinges give a low, familiar creak, and the warmer air of the hallway reaches out to meet you. Inside, the smell is faintly of old wood and heat. Mailboxes line one wall, their brass doors dull and familiar. You pass a hand over the top of yours just to feel the cool, smooth metal, then head toward the stairs. The stairwell is narrow, painted in layers over the years, the banister worn smooth by hands like yours. Somewhere above, a door closes gently, and you hear the muted thump of footsteps crossing a carpeted floor. You climb at an unhurried pace, boots making a soft thud on each step. The winter outside lingers in the slight chill of the walls, but as you reach your floor, you can hear the building's old heating system working. A low, constant murmur in the pipes. At the top of the stairs, a small window reveals more of the night, roofs lined with white, the faint glow of an intersection, a single car tire hissing over wet pavement far below. Your door waits at the end of the hall, paint a little scuffed near the knob where keys have brushed against it. You fit your own key into the lock and turn it. The tumblers catch and release with a sound you know by heart. The door swings inward, and you step into the quiet of your place, nudging it closed behind you with a soft click. It's dim inside at first, just the ghost of light from the street filtering through the curtains. Your fingers find the wall switch, and a nearby lamp blinks on, not too bright, just a mellow glow that reaches across the room. The radiator under the front window is already hissing gently, filling the air with that particular warmth. Older buildings know slightly dry, faintly metallic, comforting all the same. You set your bag down in its usual spot by the door. Your keys find the little dish on the small shelf there, landing with a quiet clink that feels like the official end of the outside world for the day. Your phone comes out of your pocket and lands face down, screen dark, on the entry table. There's no need for any more alerts tonight. Standing in the entrance, you shrug out of your coat. The fabric rustles softly as you slide your arms free. You feel the weight leave your shoulders, leaving them a little lighter, a little looser. Boots come off next, laces tugged open, soles thumping gently on the mat as you step out of them. Your feet find the familiar give of thick socks, then the cool, smooth touch of the hardwood floor. You breathe in again, slower this time, letting your chest expand, feeling your ribs stretch slightly. Then you exhale, letting your shoulders settle, letting your jaw soften. Another easy breath in and out, like you're matching the hush of the radiator, the faint rise and fall of its sound. The lamp on the side table is still a bit brighter than you want for the rest of the night. You cross the room and twist the dimmer knob until the light softens to a comfortable low. Shadows round out the corners, and everything feels closer, calmer. The city beyond the window is still, just a faint glow behind the curtains, the suggestion of snowflakes drifting past the glass. Here, in this small, worn, familiar space, the day finally lets go. There are no meetings, no calls, no errands left. Just the faint hiss of heat, a little wind brushing along the roof outside, and the quiet understanding that you don't have to be anywhere else. Not now, not for the rest of the night. The room settles around you as your eyes adjust to the softened light. The living area isn't large, but it's arranged so everything you need is within a few easy steps. A small sofa sits facing the window, cushions slightly slouched in the spots where you usually sit. A woven rug stretches out in front of it, muting the creak of the old floorboards beneath. The front window reaches nearly from waist height to just below the ceiling, a tall rectangle of glass edged by thick molding. Heavy curtains, lined against winter drafts, are drawn nearly closed, leaving only a narrow gap in the center. Through that gap you can see the snow continuing its slow descent, swirling in the light of the street lamp. The glass holds a faint chill. A delicate fog blooms where the warm air inside meets the cold from outside. Beneath the window, the radiator does its steady work. It hisses and sighs in a rhythm that you've grown used to, like someone breathing in the next room. Every so often, a soft ping runs along the pipes as hot water moves through them, a reminder that outside the temperature has slipped below freezing, somewhere around the kind of cold that makes car roofs white and sidewalks crunch underfoot. Inside, though, the air just feels pleasantly warm, enough to loosen your fingers and unwedge the stiffness from your neck. To one side of the room, a short bookshelf stands against the wall. Its shelves crowded, paperbacks lean together, some with creased spines, a few hardcovers stacked horizontally where they refuse to fit upright. A small framed print hangs above it, the image softened by the low light, more suggestion than detail at this hour. On the other side, a narrow doorway opens toward the kitchen. From where you stand, you can see part of the countertop, the corner of the sink, and the cool shine of a metal faucet catching the lamplight. The kitchen is quiet, darker than the living room, but its outlines are familiar. A small stove, the hint of tile backsplash, cabinets whose doors close with a gentle wooden thud. A short hallway breaks off toward the back, leading to the bedroom and a small bathroom. The hallway walls hold a few photographs and prints collected over time, scenes of water, trees, and bits of sky, each one a little window of its own. The frames cast soft, elongated shadows now, reaching down toward the baseboards. The building itself makes its presence known in quiet ways. Somewhere above you, a floorboard gives a soft creak as a neighbor shifts their weight, then goes still again. The wind traces along the eaves outside, nudging at whatever loose edge it can find, producing a low, breathy sound that rises and falls. From far below, almost too faint to notice, comes the distant whoosh of a bus turning a corner and the muted hiss of tires over wet pavement, softened by distance and snow. You take a few slow steps around the room, feeling the gentle unevenness of the floorboards, the subtle dip near the middle of the space where countless footsteps have passed over the years. The rug underfoot is thick and forgiving, its fibers slightly springy through your socks. The air carries a few quiet scents. There's the dry warmth of the radiator, a little trace of dust heating on metal. A hint of something herbal lingers from an earlier evening, maybe a candle you burned or a tea bag you set aside to cool. Underneath it all, is the grounded smell of the building itself. Old wood, painted plaster, a slight echo of past winters. On the small side table next to the sofa, a lamp with a simple fabric shade pools warm light onto the tabletop. Next to it sits a coaster with a faint ring at its center, evidence of many nights spent here with something warm to drink, watching the city move towards sleep. Further along the table, a small stack of magazines and a thin notebook sit, edges slightly fanned from use. The heating hums and sighs, carrying warmth through the skeleton of the building. Now and then, there's a faint rattling in the pipes, not loud enough to startle, just a small reminder of how old and sturdy this place is. The wind outside presses against the walls and windows, but the glass holds steady, and the heavy curtains barely stir. You glance back toward the door. Your coat hangs on its hook near the entrance, slowly losing the chill it carried in. Melted snow droplets glisten on the fabric, catching the lamplight before they soak into the fibers and disappear. Your boots sit neatly on the mat, faint trace of street salt dusting their sides. In the kitchen, the dark shapes wait patiently, the stove silent, the kettle resting on a cool burner, cabinets holding their neat rows of dishes. In the bedroom beyond, the bed is made, covers pulled up, pillow resting where your head will meet it later. Everything here has its place, and tonight the whole apartment seems to be quietly exhaling with you. Outside, the city continues its own, slower rhythm, traffic lights cycling through colors, someone pulling a curtain closed across the street, a bus stopping farther down the block. But from inside this room, all of that comes through as a muted background, a faint texture rather than a demand. The room feels held between winter and warmth, between the crisp air outside and the snug air in here. It's the kind of night where being inside, in your own space, feels like the simplest kind of luxury. You roll your shoulders once, then again, letting the muscles along your neck and upper back lengthen and soften. The weight of the day slips down your spine and seems to drain into the floor. You stretch one arm across your chest, then the other, feeling the gentle pull along each shoulder blade. Nothing sharp, nothing strained, just a quiet loosening, as if your body is finally catching up to the fact that you're home. Your hands come together in front of you, fingers lacing loosely. You notice how they feel in the warm room, air no longer stiff from the cold, but not quite fully relaxed yet. You rub your thumbs over the backs of your fingers, feeling the faint ridges of your knuckles, the softness of the skin. Winter has left its mark in slight dryness at your fingertips, and you trace that texture without judgment, just noticing. You move toward the sofa and sink down onto the cushion, which yields beneath you and then supports you in familiar ways. The fabric is slightly textured against the backs of your legs, a gentle weave you've brushed against 100 times. As you sit, your body makes small adjustments. Hips settling deeper, lower back leaning into the cushion behind you, feet sliding forward until your heels rest on the rug. The rug feels warm compared to the floor near the door. Its fibers press up through your socks, blurring at the edges, making the space between you and the wood below feel soft and forgiving. You wiggle your toes a little, and the movement sends a mild rippling through the muscles of your calves, drawing your awareness downward. Your chest rises and falls at an easy pace. You feel your ribs expand against the fabric of your shirt, then relax as you exhale. The air you breathe in carries the warmth of the room, with a faint hint of dust and something herbal lingering from earlier. When you breathe out, it leaves your body at almost the same temperature as your skin, carrying with it a handful of the day's leftover tension. You let your head tip back against the cushion, turning slightly to hear the room more clearly. The radiator's whisper becomes a little more distinct from this angle. There's a slight undercurrent of gurgling in the pipes, a note of moving water beneath the hiss. Above that, the wind makes a quiet, distant sound at the edge of the building, like someone drawing a soft finger along the roofline. Your awareness shifts to the fabric against your shoulders and upper arms. The material is familiar, a comfortable layer you've worn on plenty of evenings like this. It holds a little of the room's warmth now, wrapping around you without pressing. As you breathe, your sleeves move just enough to remind you that your body is here, in this exact spot, supported by cushions and framed by soft light. After a moment, you lean forward, elbows on your knees, and let your head hang for a few breaths. The stretch across the back of your neck is mild and welcome. The weight of your head elongates the muscles along your spine just enough to feel the difference, and gravity does the work for you. When you slowly straighten again, everything above your shoulders feels a little clearer, a little lighter. You slide a hand along the sofa cushion, feeling the seams and the faint indent where you usually sit. Your fingertips trace the edge of the cushion and the small wrinkle where it meets the armrest. There's a comfort in knowing the tiny geography of this spot, the way the cushion dips more on one side, the slight curve where your body always leans. Standing again, you cross to the window. The floor under the rug gives way to bare wood, cooler beneath your socks, a thin reminder of the cold beyond the walls. At the window, you slip your fingers between the curtains and gently widen the gap. A little bit of cooler air spills in from the glass, not cold enough to bite, just cool enough to notice against your skin. Outside, the street is washed in the soft orange of the street lamp. Snowflakes drift diagonally as the breeze nudges them along, catching light as they pass through the beam. Parked cars sit with a thin layer of white on their roofs, and the sidewalks carry the uneven patchwork of footprints and shovel marks. One window across the way glows with the flicker of a television. Another shows the silhouette of a houseplant against its blinds. You rest your palm lightly against the cool glass, feeling the temperature difference, knowing that somewhere around 30 degrees separates this side of the window from the other. The pane is solid beneath your hand, a firm barrier between your quiet, warm body and the crisp air outside. You let your hand rest there for a count of a few easy breaths, then withdraw it, fingertips tingling slightly from the brief chill. Turning back toward the room, you feel the warmth from the radiator greet you again. The change is subtle but noticeable, a slight loosening in your chest, the skin of your cheeks softening as it warms. Your shoulders drop another fraction of an inch, as if the room itself has reassured your muscles that there is nothing left to brace against tonight. You reach down and pick up a throw blanket draped over the back of the sofa, the fabric soft and slightly weighty in your hands. As you sit, you spread it over your legs and tuck the edge under your feet, letting the warmth build slowly. The cloth traps the heat from your body, and within a minute or two, a pleasant coziness spreads upward from your knees. Your breathing falls into step with the small sounds around you, the hush of the radiator, the distant wind, the nearly imperceptible ticking of some unseen clock somewhere in the apartment. Each inhale feels a little deeper, each exhale a little longer, like the room and your body are quietly pacing each other. In this moment, you're simply here, not solving anything, not planning, not reworking the day. Just you, your weight supported, your lungs moving, your skin warmed by the room and the blanket. The city can keep moving in its own gentle way outside while you stay right where you are, fully in your body, fully in this calm, winter room. After a while, the urge to move comes not from restlessness, but from a quiet curiosity about your own space. You slip the blanket aside and stand, letting it slide in a soft heap along the cushion. Your feet find the floor again, and you take a few unhurried steps around the room, letting your hand trail along the back of the sofa, feeling the fabric catch lightly on your fingertips. You start your small circuit near the window, pausing by the radiator. The metal cover is warm to the touch, but not hot. A low, steady heat radiating outward. You can feel it most clearly at your shins, a gentle rising warmth that makes the air above it shimmer faintly in the lamplight. The sound it makes has settled into a consistent hush, with only the occasional soft tap in the pipes as the system adjusts. On the side table next to the sofa, the lamp casts its pool of light across a few familiar objects. Among them rests a ceramic mug, its surface a calm, seagreen shade that seems to hold a piece of summer water in the middle of winter. The color shifts slightly in the light darker where the glaze pooled near the base, lighter near the rim. The handle looks just large enough for 2 fingers, curved in a way that fits easily into your grip when you use it. Tonight it's empty, a faint ring at the bottom where tea once lay, but the mug itself still holds the memory of warmth. When you brush a fingertip along the rim, the ceramic feels smooth and cool, the contrast to the room's warmth grounding and clear. You let your gaze linger on the mug for a moment, taking in the way it stands out against the neutral tones of the table and the sofa, a small island of color against the quietly lit room. The lamplight catches the glaze just enough to draw a soft highlight along one edge, and then you move on without needing to do anything more with it. Near the far end of the same table, a small cluster of items sits on a shallow wooden tray. Among them, a brass pocket watch rests on its side, its rounded surface gleaming dully in the low light. The metal holds a warm, aged sheen, not polished to a bright shine, but softened by years of handling. Fine scratches run along its case, tiny lines that speak of time spent in pockets, on tabletops, in hands. As you move closer, you can hear it, a gentle, steady ticking that threads through the room's other sounds. Not loud, not demanding, just a quiet, rhythmic presence under everything else, steady as a heartbeat. You take the watch in your hand, feeling the cool brass warm almost immediately against your skin. It has a reassuring weight, substantial but not heavy, like a small anchor resting in your palm. You don't need to open it to read the time. Tonight, it's enough just to feel the way it sits in your hand, the faint vibration of the mechanism inside as it counts off seconds in soft, even beats. For a moment, you stand there with the watch resting against your fingers, listening to its ticking join the hush of the radiator and the distant stroke of the wind. Then you set it back down on the tray, where it resumes its quiet post, ticking softly to itself. From there, your tour carries you toward the small hallway. The floorboards are narrower here, and they creak a little more plainly under your weight, each sound familiar and tame. The walls hold a few framed photographs, a shoreline at dusk, a stand of bare trees reaching up into a gray sky, a close-up of leaves trapped under early ice. The images are simple and calm, more about mood than subject, and tonight their muted tones match the evening outside. On the wall near the entry to the kitchen hangs a round wall clock, its face pale against the slightly darker paint. Black hands mark out the hours and minutes, and instead of numbers, simple lines ring the edge. Its ticking is softer than the pocket watches, but still present, a faint, steady tick that fills the small space. As you pass, you notice the position of the hands, close enough to accurate, to be useful, but perhaps a little behind, a small reminder that it's due for a bit of attention, just not this second. The kitchen doorway frames a scene of quiet readiness. Inside, the countertops are mostly clear, a drying rack holding a single plate and spoon from earlier in the day. Cabinets sit closed, their handles cool and simple. The stove waits with its knobs turned off, a kettle resting on one of the burners, patient and still. A small towel hangs from the oven door handle, its fabric worn soft from use, ready to be taken up again whenever you need it. In the bathroom, tiles line the floor in muted colors, a bath mat resting at the side of the tub. The mirror above the sink reflects a smaller, dimmer version of the hallway light, doubling its warm glow. Towels hang from hooks on the wall, folded over in casual loops, their edges uneven in a way that feels lived in and real. At the end of the hall, the bedroom waits, door partly open. The bed reaches out from one wall, covers smoothed but not overly neat, the top blanket folded back just enough to make slipping in feel easy later. A small lamp sits on the bedside table, off for now, its shade a lighter spot in the dimness. In the corner, a chair holds the day's clothes, draped over the back and seat, quietly indicating that tomorrow will come in its own time. You turn back toward the living room, letting your hand glide along the wall, feeling the coolness of the painted surface under your fingers. As you pass the wall clock again, its soft ticking meets the distant ticking of the brass watch in the other room. Move past the doorway, and the clearer sound of the radiator returns, its familiar hush wrapping around you once more. By the time you come back to where you started, near the sofa and the window, the whole apartment feels mapped out in your awareness. You know where the warmth sits, where the cooler patches linger, where the faint smells of soap, paper, and old wood are strongest. You know where the ticking is most audible, where the snow is most visible, where the light pools and where it fades. You stand there for a moment, listening to the layered sounds, the radiator's breath, the soft tick of clock and watch, the far-off wind at the roofline, the almost silent fall of snow beyond the glass. The space around you feels not just like a backdrop, but like a gentle companion, settled and steady, ready to hold the rest of your night. Your eyes drift back to the wall clock near the kitchen doorway. The memory of its slightly lagging hands lingers, not as a problem to fix, but as a small, patient task that suits this quiet evening. Tending to it feels like the sort of thing that belongs to nights like this, simple, unhurried, almost ceremonial in its own way. You walk toward it at an easy pace, your socked feet barely whispering against the floor. As you come closer, the clock's ticking grows a little clearer, each small sound spaced evenly apart, like tiny footsteps on carpet. You stand in front of it, hands at your sides for a moment, just listening. Seconds pass, marked out one by one, and you feel yourself matching their rhythm without even trying. A small drawer sits in the narrow console table beneath the clock. You slide it open, and inside are a few useful odds and ends. A pen, a couple of spare batteries, a folded note, a roll of tape. Nestled among them lies a small metal key, familiar in your hand as soon as you reach for it. You close your fingers around it, feeling its shape press gently into your palm. The key is cool at first, but not for long. As you move back toward the clock, it warms against your skin. You turn it over once, twice, noticing the tiny teeth at one end. It's a modest tool, made for one clear purpose, and tonight, that purpose feels just right for the pace of your mind. Standing close to the clock, you see its face more clearly in the hallway light. The minute hand lags just a little behind where it should be, maybe a minute or two off, as if time here has been strolling while the rest of the world was walking. The glass over the face holds a faint smudge from where you once reached out to tap it, checking if it was still running. You find the small winding point along the side of the clock's case, a tiny opening made exactly for this key. The act of fitting the key into it requires you to slow down just a little more, to bring your attention fully to the moment. You guide the key into place until it seats with a soft click, a gentle confirmation that you've aligned it correctly. With one hand supporting the side of the clock, you start to turn the key with the other. The movement is small, but you feel a subtle resistance, the quiet strength of springs and gears waking up inside the wooden body. The metal of the key presses firmly but comfortably against your fingertips as you turn. Somewhere within, a coiled spring tightens by a fraction, and the clock's ticking responds, its rhythm sharpening almost imperceptibly. You turn the key just a little at first, then pause, listening. Tick, tick, tick. The sound continues, serene and unhurried, carrying on with its work, as if grateful for the attention. You turn the key again, another gentle quarter circle, feeling the tension build a bit more. The key's loop rests between your thumb and forefinger, and you notice the slight texture of the metal, the way it has been worn smooth along the edges by years of these small, steady movements. This isn't a task that needs to be done quickly, so you don't rush it. You wind a little, pause, breathe, listen. Inhale as you begin the turn. Exhale as you finish it. With each small movement, the clock's inner workings gather a little more energy, storing it away for days to come. You imagine the spring curling tighter, ready to unspool its strength slowly, calmly, over time. When the key resists your fingers a bit more firmly, you know it's enough. You don't force it. You never do. You give it one last tiny nudge, just to bring the winding to a natural stopping point, then ease the key back out. The small click as it leaves the slot is almost inaudible, but your fingers feel it. The key returns to your palm, a little warmer now, as though it's sharing back the warmth you lent it. You glance at the face of the clock again. The minute hand has crept a little farther along, and you take a moment to gently nudge it into line, just a touch forward so it matches the quiet sense of time in the rest of the apartment. You don't need perfect precision, you just want it to feel right. You step back a half pace and listen. The ticking feels a little stronger now, each small sound sure and steady. Tick, tick, tick. There's something comforting about knowing that, while you sleep and move through your days, this simple mechanism will continue its quiet work, marking moments you don't need to keep track of yourself. With the key still in your hand, you pull the drawer of the console table open once more. Before placing it back, you pause to straighten the things inside. You line up the pen with the edge of the drawer, smooth the folded note so it lies flat, tuck the roll of tape into one corner where it won't roll around. The key goes back to its familiar spot among them, resting where you'll find it again next time. You close the drawer with a soft, final push, listening to the tiny thud as it meets the frame. For a brief moment, the only sounds are the clock's renewed ticking and the omnipresent hush of the radiator in the next room. Out beyond the building, faint and far away, a single car moves down the street before the quiet folds in once more. Standing there in the hallway, you notice how this small task has left its mark on you. Your breathing feels deeper, your thoughts slower, as if winding the clock wound down something restless inside as well. Time here has become something gentle and manageable, not a race to keep up with, but a slow, steady rhythm you can trust. When you step away from the clock, its ticking follows you as a friendly companion rather than a reminder. Each tick is just another soft footstep of the evening moving forward, carrying you at its own calm pace toward rest. The thought of something warm to drink arrives quietly, like a suggestion rather than a craving. The air in the apartment is cozy now, but the idea of wrapping your hands around a warm cup feels like the natural next step in this easing night. You turn toward the kitchen, letting the sound of the ticking clock fade a little behind you as you move. The kitchen welcomes you with a different sort of hush. Here, the surfaces are cool and smooth, and the darker corners feel peaceful rather than empty. You flip on the small overhead light above the stove, and it spills a gentle glow across the countertops, leaving the rest of the room in comfortable dimness. The contrast between the soft light and the shadows makes the space feel contained and safe, like a small circle drawn around your evening ritual. You reach for the kettle resting on the stove. Its handle feels familiar in your hand, balanced and solid. When you lift it, you feel the lightness that tells you it needs fresh water. Turning to the sink, you nudge the faucet handle and listen as the water begins to run, starting in a small rush and then smoothing into a steady stream. The sound of it hitting the metal of the kettle is clear and gentle, a bright note in the otherwise muted room. As the kettle fills, you adjust the flow of water so it's neither too loud nor too fast, just enough to get the job done without hurrying anything along. When it feels right, you turn off the tap and the stream shrinks to a drip, then stops altogether. The air holds a faint chill where the water splashed, but your hands stay warm around the kettle's handle. You set the kettle back on the burner and turn on the stove. If it's gas, there's a soft click, then the quiet whoosh of flame blooming under the metal. If it's electric, the burner begins to glow faintly, an almost imperceptible hum joining the other small sounds in the apartment. Either way, the kettle settles into place with a simple, grounded weight, ready to warm the water at its own pace. Next, you open the cabinet where you keep your tea. Boxes and small tins sit in a loose row, each carrying its own scent and memory. Tonight, your hand goes almost automatically to the chamomile, fingers closing around the box with a gentle certainty. When you open it, the soft, apple-tinged aroma blooms into the air, mild and soothing, as if the tea itself already understands what you need. You take one bag and set it aside, then reach for a mug. This one is simple and sturdy, its sides thick enough to hold heat without burning your hands. The interior is pale, so you'll see the color deepen as the tea steeps. When you set it on the counter, the ceramic makes a quiet, reassuring sound against the surface. An apple waits in the small bowl of fruit on the counter, its skin firm under your thumb. You lift it and feel its weight, smooth and cool in your palm. With a small knife, you cut a slice from it, not too thick, not too thin, just enough to share a hint of sweetness with the tea. The knife moves through the flesh with a soft, crisp sound, and the scent of fresh apple mixes with the chamomile in the air. You place the apple slice at the bottom of the mug, where it rests against the cool ceramic. The chamomile bag follows, its string draping over the rim in an easy loop. The kettle begins to murmur behind you, the water inside shifting and stirring as it climbs toward a boil. The sound is low and calming, like someone talking in the next room in a voice you don't need to make out. When the kettle's whisper becomes a proper simmer, you lift it from the burner. Steam curls from the spout, rising and twisting in the kitchen light before disappearing. You pour slowly, watching the clear water meet the tea bag and the apple slice, watching the color bloom outward in gentle swirls. Pale at first, then deepening into a warm, honeyed gold that glows softly in the light. The steam carries the scent upward herbal, slightly sweet from the apple, comforting in a way that feels both familiar and fresh. You breathe it in, closing your eyes for a moment as the warmth touches your face. The simple act of holding the kettle and guiding the water feels like tracing the outline of an old, beloved routine. When the mug is full enough, you set the kettle back on the stove and wrap your hands around the cup. The heat seeps into your palms, spreading through your fingers, then up into your wrists. You can feel the warmth soak gradually into your skin, radiating inward. The ceramic is hot, but not too hot to hold. It asks you to be a little mindful, a little deliberate, as you carry it. You stand there for a minute in the kitchen, just holding the mug, letting the tea steep. The room is quiet except for the soft tick of cooling metal from the burner and the distant murmur of the radiator in the next room. The tea grows stronger, its color richer, its scent more inviting. The apple slice slowly releases its sweetness into the heat, turning the fragrance into something round and mellow. When it feels ready, you take the first careful sip. The tea meets your lips warm but not scalding, spreading heat across your tongue and down your throat. The chamomile is gentle, floral without being perfumed, and the apple adds a small, hopeful brightness at the edge of the taste. You swallow, feeling the warmth trace its way down into your chest, settling there like a soft weight. With the mug held firmly in both hands, you turn off the stove light and leave the kitchen. The small glow behind you disappears, and the apartment returns to its earlier dimness, guided by the single lamp in the living room. The transition feels smooth and natural, like a slow exhale. Back at the sofa, you ease yourself down again, setting the mug on the table for a moment while you pull the blanket back over your legs. The fabric remembers your shape, falling into familiar folds as you tuck your feet beneath it. When you pick up the mug once more, the warmth meets you like an old friend, soaking into your palms all over again. You take another sip, slower this time, noticing how the taste has mellowed as the tea continues to steep. The apple has softened just a little at the bottom of the mug, lending more of its sweetness to each mouthful. Between sips, you let the cup rest in your hands, absorbing its warmth, watching the faint wisp of steam rise and disappear into the dim air. Around you, the apartment continues its quiet chorus, the radiator's gentle hiss, the clock's steady ticking, the occasional press of wind at the eaves. Outside, snow still falls in the glow beyond the curtain, but it feels far away now, more like a backdrop than a condition. Here, in this small, warm room, with a mug in your hands and your body folded comfortably into the cushions, the night has narrowed down to something simple and kind. Each sip of chamomile nudges you a little deeper into rest, softening the edges of your thoughts, loosening whatever remains of the day. The warmth in your hands, in your chest, and in the room around you all seem to agree. You're home, you're safe, and there is nowhere else you need to be as this early winter night settles gently around you. The empty cup sits on the table now, a small circle of warmth gradually fading into the cooler air of the room. Your hands rest loosely in your lap, fingers relaxed, palms no longer busy. The tea has left a soft aftertaste, faintly floral and sweet, and the warmth in your chest feels like it has taken on a life of its own, moving at its own easy pace. In the quiet that follows, a kind of inner voice drifts up, not loud, not insistent, just a steady presence that feels almost like a friend sitting nearby. It doesn't arrive as full sentences at first, more as a sense that today is over, that it was enough, that you are allowed to stop trying to hold it all in your mind. Thoughts about the day flicker at the edges. A moment of conversation here, a small task left unfinished there. They appear and then soften, like distant windows across the street that glow briefly before someone turns the light off. Each time one shows up, another thought meets it, gently. It's all right. That can wait. You did what you could. There is no need to go back over it now. You shift slightly on the sofa, nestling further into the cushions. The blanket covers your legs again, its weight a familiar comfort. That quiet inner voice rolls on in its unhurried way, as if it's matching the steady tick of the hallway clock. You don't have to solve anything now. You don't have to remember every little detail. You don't have to carry the whole day up the stairs. These ideas settle in without fanfare, as simple truths that feel obvious once they're spoken, even if no sound leaves your lips. The apartment seems to agree. Radiators breathe steadily, offering their own version of reassurance. We've got the temperature, you can let that go. The wind outside handles the cold and the snow. Inside, your only job is to rest. Your gaze drifts toward the thin opening in the curtains. Through that slim gap, you see a suggestion of the street below, just shapes, really. A parked car with a pale layer of snow on its roof. A stretch of sidewalk with footprints that are already softening. The glow of a street lamp pooling on the concrete. You think, quietly, that it's nice to be in this little pocket of stillness while the city goes about whatever it's doing. It doesn't feel like you're missing out. It feels like you've stepped aside for a while, giving yourself permission to sit down and let the world continue on its own. Inside your head, the voice grows even softer, sliding into the kind of thoughts that feel like they're being laid down with both hands. You did enough for one day. You are allowed to be tired. You are allowed to enjoy this quiet. No debate, no argument, just acceptance. Your body responds by relaxing in subtle increments. The muscles along your jaw loosen. The space between your eyebrows smooths out. The corners of your mouth settle, not quite into a smile, but into a neutral, comfortable calm. Your breathing has its own gentle commentary. Each inhale says, "I'm here." Each exhale answers, "I can let go a little more." It's not something you force. It's something you notice, the way you might notice the warmth from a vent or the color of the walls. That inner voice returns again with small, practical kindnesses. You don't need to check the time. You don't need to reach for your phone. You don't need to be productive. It's a new kind of to-do list, made up entirely of things you're allowed not to do. As the list lengthens, your shoulders sink just a touch deeper into the back of the sofa. You realize that the more you listen, the slower your thoughts move, like snowdrifts settling against the base of a building. There's a feeling of companionship in this quiet, even though no one else is in the room. The furniture, the radiators, the soft light, the ticking clock, and that gentle inner voice all seem to be on the same side, your side. They're not asking anything of you. They're just here, ready to keep you company while you move closer to sleep. At some point, you notice that your mind has stopped reaching ahead toward tomorrow. It's not trying to organize lists or plan conversations or rehearse anything. Instead, it lingers on small, present tense details. The way the blanket's fibers feel under your fingertips, the way the air brushes your face as you breathe, the way the room's light doesn't quite reach the corners, leaving them in soft shadow. And inside, that gentle voice sums it up in the simplest way. This is enough. You are here. You can rest. You don't need to answer it. You just let the words float there for a while, blending with the hush of the apartment until they feel less like thoughts and more like the quiet background of the night. The last of the tea's warmth lingers in your body, and your gaze drifts toward the kitchen doorway. You can almost picture the cup on the counter, the faint steam long gone now, the room holding the memory of its fragrance. That thought nudges loose another memory, the way a snowflake sliding down the window might nudge another from the ledge. Without needing to move, you find yourself remembering an earlier winter evening, not so different from this one. The same kind of cold outside, the same kind of hush in the streets, though maybe the snow was only beginning then, small flakes just starting to gather in the cracks of the sidewalk. In your mind, you're standing in a little shop that is warmer than the day around it, shelves close together, wooden floor underfoot, a bell that chimed gently when you came in. You had ducked in mostly to escape the wind, the way people do when their cheeks are starting to sting and their fingers have gone stiff in their gloves. Inside, the air smelled faintly of clay and glaze and something like citrus. On a table near the window sat a neat row of handmade mugs, each one a different color, each one with its own tiny imperfections that made it unique. Your attention had gone, almost immediately, to one in particular. Its surface held a soft, seagreen color, like shallow water near a quiet shore, with deeper shades pooling near the base and around the handle. There had been a thin, uneven line where the glaze thinned at the rim, a detail that somehow made it feel more human, more approachable. You remember picking it up for the first time, feeling the cool ceramic in your hand, the way the curve of the handle matched your fingers as if it had been waiting specifically for them. It wasn't heavy, but it wasn't flimsy either. It had that reassuring weight that told you it could hold many evenings' worth of warmth without complaint. In that moment, you had thought something simple. This feels like home. The memory moves forward a little, following you as you carried the mug to the counter, as the person there wrapped it carefully in paper. You recall the crinkle of that paper, the soft sound of it folding around the ceramic, the way the mug disappeared for a short while into a neat, square parcel. You remember slipping it into your bag and stepping back out into the winter air, feeling oddly pleased to be carrying a small, secret promise of future evenings in your hands. Another image rises up alongside it, like a second slide in an old projector. A different day, maybe not winter, Maybe one of those cool days when the air tastes like rain, even if it never actually arrives. You're at a small flea market or antique stall, the kind with tables covered in cloths and collections of objects that have already lived one life and are ready for another. There, among watches and chains and small boxes, you saw it. A brass pocket watch lying open on a velvet pad. The face caught your eye first, but what stayed with you was the sound, the quiet, steady ticking that seemed to come from somewhere deeper than its small metal body. When you picked it up, the case felt cool and smooth, the edges comfortably rounded, as if many hands had held it before yours. You remember the way your thumb pressed lightly against the lid, how you traced the curve of it while listening to that soft rhythm. Tick, tick, tick. It wasn't loud, but it somehow cut through the background noise of the market. Voices chatting, bags rustling, footsteps on concrete. That gentle, persistent sound felt like a tiny anchor in the midst of everything else, a steady beat in a busy world. Later, at home, you had found a place for the watch. You set it down somewhere it could be both seen and heard, a dresser, a table, a small pocket of space that felt right. The first night you wound it, the mechanism had responded with that same quiet confidence you felt tonight when you tended to the wall clock. Each turn of the winding piece brought a faint resistance, and then that resistance eased as the watch gathered enough strength to keep going. Back here on the sofa, the memory unfolds without any rush. You see your own hands in your mind lifting the mug from its paper wrap for the first time at your kitchen counter, feeling the smoothness of the glaze, placing the pocket watch carefully onto a folded cloth so the metal wouldn't scratch. These images are simple, tender, and they float through your awareness like slow-moving snow outside the window. There's no longing in them, no ache, just a sense of continuity, that the objects you touched on those earlier days are the same ones resting quietly in your apartment now. The mug, likely sitting upside down on a towel or waiting in a cabinet. The watch, ticking softly in whatever spot you left it, part of the layered soundscape of this night. You notice how, even in your memory, your movements were unhurried. You can see yourself turning the mug in your hands to admire the color, can hear the almost inaudible click as the watch case closed. You realize that even then, you were practicing the same kind of care you gave the wall clock tonight, making small, deliberate choices that helped shape the calm of evenings to come. The memory begins to fade back into the present, like steam dispersing from a cup. You bring your awareness once more to the room around you, to the sofa beneath you and the blanket over your legs. The radiators are still humming. The wind still traces along the roof. Somewhere, the watch ticks on, too quiet to pick out from here, but present all the same. You feel quietly grateful not just for the mug and the watch themselves, but for the way they've threaded through your days, turning ordinary moments into little rituals. That gentle gratitude settles over you as the memory returns to wherever such things rest when you're not looking right at them, leaving behind a soft, contented warmth. After a while, the impulse to move returns, but it's different from the earlier, curious wandering. This time it's about tidying the edges of the evening, closing little circles so the night can taper into rest without anything calling you back. You slide the blanket aside and stand slowly, letting your feet feel the floor again. The empty cup on the table is the first small task. You pick it up, noticing that it's cooled to room temperature now, the ceramic no longer warm in your hands. There's something quietly satisfying about that, a sign that time has passed gently while you sat and breathed and remembered. In the kitchen, you flick on the softer light over the sink. It falls in a warm cone over the basin and the surrounding counter, leaving the rest of the room in tranquil dimness. The water from the tap runs clear and steady as you rinse the cup, the sound bright and friendly in the hush. You tilt the cup, watching the last tea-tinted streaks swirl away, then set it upside down on the drying rack. A single droplet slips down the side and clings to the edge before letting go. You give the counter a quick, unhurried wipe with a cloth, smoothing away any small splashes you might have made earlier. The motions are simple, almost automatic, but doing them at this slower pace turns them into their own kind of ritual. Each pass of the cloth leaves the surface a little clearer, a little more ready for tomorrow. When you turn off the kitchen light, the room returns to its earlier softness. Only the glow from the living room lamp and the faint strip of brightness from the hallway remain, tracing a gentle path through the apartment. You follow that light into the hall, moving at a pace that feels like it fits the hour, quiet, unhurried, easy. The wall clock meets you again just where you left it, still ticking away with calm certainty. You pause there for a moment, standing in front of it as you did earlier, listening. The rhythm is steady, each second falling into the next with no sign of strain. Your small act of winding has carried it comfortably through this stretch of evening. You reach out and steady the wooden frame with your fingertips. There's nothing more it needs from you tonight. The key is tucked away. The springs are wound. The clock will keep doing its job while you sleep. The satisfaction in that knowledge settles into your chest like a final check mark on a list, though no paper was ever involved. From the hall, you glance into the bathroom. The light is off, but everything's in order. Towels hanging where they belong, counter mostly clear, except for the familiar few items you always leave out. The mirror reflects a dim version of the hallway lamp, not sharp enough to pull you into any kind of inspection. Tonight, there's no need to study your reflection. You know how you feel, and that's enough. Past the bathroom, you look into the bedroom. The bed waits. Covers, smoothed, pillow plumped from earlier. The small bedside table holds a few quiet belongings in their usual places. You step in just long enough to pull the blanket back a little more, making an easy, inviting space to slip into later. The sheets release a subtle, clean scent when you lift them. One more tiny comfort lined up in the queue of the night. On your way back down the hall, you take in the apartment with fresh eyes, as if you're doing a brief, kind inventory. The living room looks settled, blanket arranged neatly where you left it, books resting where they always do. No piles of things tug at your attention. There's no clutter demanding to be sorted through before you can rest. You make a couple of tiny adjustments as you pass, straightening a cushion, nudging a magazine into a neater stack, aligning a corner of the rug with the edge of the table. Each motion is small enough that you barely think about it, but they add up to a feeling of gentle order, the kind that doesn't come from perfection but from care. The lamp switch is cool under your fingers when you reach for it. Before turning it down, You take one last look around the room, the softened glow on the walls, the shadowed outlines of furniture, the faint reflection of the window in the framed picture nearby. Everything seems ready to rest, and that thought makes your own body feel more ready too. You lower the lamp to a dimmer setting rather than turning it off entirely, letting the room fall into a deeper, cozier shade of light. Edges blur, colors mute. The brightest thing now is the small patch of hallway where light spills from the bathroom and bedroom doors. The living room has become a place you pass through on the way to sleep rather than a place where anything more needs to happen. Somewhere in the background, the clock ticks on. Radiators keep breathing. The building holds its quiet vigil over the night. You've put away the small things that needed tending: cup, counter, blanket, bed. The rest of it, the larger currents of your life, can remain where they are until morning. As you stand there in the softened light, you feel a quiet wave of appreciation for these four walls and the way they hold your days. This modest space, with its worn floorboards and whispering radiators, has become a kind of vessel for evenings like this. You let that gratitude sit with you for a breath or two, then breathe out as if saying a quiet thank you to the room itself. The hour has shifted from evening toward night in a way that feels more like a slow fade than a sharp line. You can feel it in your body, the subtle heaviness in your limbs, the way your thoughts move in slower, broader strokes. It's the right moment to finish the day's arc, to turn the simple comfort of this apartment into the softest landing place you can. You start with the hallway light, leaving it on for now as you step into the bathroom. The switch clicks softly, and a gentle glow fills the small room. Tile underfoot feels a bit cooler than the wooden floor in the hall, a reminder that there is still winter outside even if you're not directly meeting it anymore. At the sink, you turn on the tap and let the water run until it reaches that perfect warm temperature, neither hot nor lukewarm, just comfortably in between. You cup your hands under the stream, watching the water fill them, then bring it up to your face. The warmth wakes your skin in a pleasant way, rinsing away the last traces of the day's air and leaving behind a fresh, neutral feeling. You wash your face slowly, palms moving in simple, circular motions. The sound of water lapping against porcelain is subtle but soothing, joined by the faint drip from the faucet when you pause. Afterward, you reach for a towel that's been hanging patiently on its hook. The fabric is soft and dry, and as you press it gently against your skin, you feel not just clean, but newly settled, as if you've shifted fully from day self to night self. Hands get their turn as well. You let warm water flow over them, rubbing your fingers, palms, and wrists with unhurried attention. The small act of caring for them, these parts of you that spent the day carrying, typing, turning knobs and handles, feels right. When you dry them, the skin is warm and relaxed, ready to be still. You turn off the bathroom light and return to the hallway, where the softer light now seems even more inviting. In the bedroom, you click on the small bedside lamp. Its shade filters the bulb into a mellow glow that reaches just far enough across the bed, a little onto the floor, up the wall where shadows begin their climb. This is the last light you intend to leave on, the one that will keep you company for the final portion of wakefulness. You change into sleep clothes at an easy pace, fabric sliding against your skin in familiar patterns. The material is soft, chosen for comfort and nothing else, and as you pull on each piece, your body seems to recognize the signal. This is what we wear for resting, not for doing. By the time you're finished, you feel more at home in yourself, as if you've taken off not just the day's clothes, but also the roles and expectations that came with them. The bed waits with its covers folded back. You smooth the sheets once more, even though you did so earlier, enjoying the cool, even texture beneath your palms. The pillow looks exactly like you left it, but somehow more inviting now that the rest of the room has dimmed. You plump it lightly, not out of necessity, but because the motion itself is calming, a way of making your resting place feel freshly prepared. Before slipping under the covers, you stand for a moment near the window. The curtain is drawn almost completely, but you gently lift one edge and peek out. The night has deepened. The snow on the street glows softly under the streetlights, smooth and undisturbed in places where no one has walked for a while. A few windows across the way are dark now, their residents already tucked into their own routines of rest. You feel no pull to open the window. The glass is cold under your fingertips, and you can sense the sharp chill waiting on the other side. It's enough to know that the winter air is there, doing its quiet work on rooftops and railings and branches. You let the curtain fall back into place, trusting the heavy fabric and sturdy panes to keep the cold where it belongs and the warmth where you are. Climbing into bed, you slip between the sheets and let the blankets settle over you. The contrast between the initial coolness of the linens and the heat of your body creates a gentle, enclosing sensation. As the seconds pass, the space under the covers warms up, forming a small, personal climate that belongs only to you. You find a position that feels right, perhaps on your back with arms resting at your sides, or on your side with hands loosely tucked near your chest. Whatever posture you choose, it carries a sense of release. The mattress supports you, meeting the curves and angles of your body without asking for anything in return. The bedside lamp casts a circle of light around you, but even that feels ready to shrink. You reach for its switch, fingers brushing the smooth base before finding the familiar control. Instead of turning it off all at once, you dim it carefully if it allows, or wait a few breaths with your fingers resting there, marking the moment. The room around you becomes a study in soft gradients, light near your pillow, deeper shade in the corners, and beyond, the quiet black of winter sky. You take a slow breath in, held just long enough to feel the stretch in your ribs, and let it out steadily. Once more, without counting or forcing, just following the natural rhythm your body prefers. Here, in this bed, on this night, with radiators humming and snow outside, the act of breathing feels like the most important and the simplest thing you can do. The lamp is still on, but it won't be for long. Bedtime, in every practical sense, has begun. Your body is horizontal, your muscles mostly loose, your mind no longer scanning for tasks. All that remains is to let the last of the light go and let the night carry you the rest of the way. The bedside lamp clicks off, and the room folds gently into darkness. Not the kind that presses in, but the kind that wraps around you like an extra blanket. Shapes remain soft outlines of furniture, a pale rectangle where the window is, the faintest suggestion of ceiling and wall, but details fade, leaving only essence. Eyes closed, the sounds come forward. The radiator keeps up its whisper, a steady exhale that ebbs and flows just enough to keep it from becoming a single, flat note. Somewhere in the building, a board creaks as it settles, then stills. The hallway clock continues its tick, 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 more distant now but still recognizable, like an old song played very quietly in another room. Your thoughts no longer move in sentences so much as in images. They drift up and slide by at their own pace, not demanding attention, simply offering themselves. You see, in your mind's eye, the front steps of the building under their layer of snow, the small drifts along the edges of each riser, the clean stretch where your footprints went earlier, now softened as more flakes have fallen. Stoops along the street lean together, their railings capped with white, their stoop lights glowing amber against the blue-tinted night. Another image, the street seen from above, like the view from your window earlier, only quieter still. Parked cars lined up along the curb, their roofs and windshields blanketed in soft white. A single tire track along the lane, the evidence of some earlier traveler. The sky above is not truly dark. It holds the faint glow of city light reflecting off low clouds and drifting snow, a muted halo that seems to breathe along with the world below. Inside the apartment, you picture the living room as it must look now. The sofa, empty but still shaped by the evening you spent there. The blanket, folded in an easy, imperfect way over the back. The table, with its faint ring where the cup rested. Nearby, in the kitchen, you imagine the mug you rinsed, resting upside down in the drying rack. Its sea-green glaze now dulled by the absence of direct light, but still there, a cool, calm tone in the darkness, holding the memory of warmth even as it cools. You see a tiny sparkle of light catching on its curved base, a reflection from some stray glow in the room, and then that image slides away like a wave receding from the shore. Your mind returns to the bedroom. On the dresser near the window, the brass pocket watch lies where you left it earlier in the night. In the dark, its metal doesn't shine. Instead, it absorbs the room's faint light and gives it back as a soft, muted gleam around the edges. Inside, the mechanism continues its careful work, ticking away in a rhythm so gentle that you don't hear it with your ears so much as sense it in the air, a quiet pulse that lines up with the slowing beat of your own heart. You imagine that, if someone looked in, they would see the watch and not realize that it's ever so slightly warmer than the surface it rests on, holding the last traces of the heat from your hand from earlier. It's a private detail between you and the object, one that doesn't need to be visible to be real. Image follows image. A close-up of snow gathering along the outer sill of the window, small mounds softening the hard edges of wood and paint. A thin line where warm air from the apartment fogs the lower part of the glass. blurring the view outside into a gentle watercolor of light and shadow. The faint outline of fire escape rails nearby, their metal bones traced in white. You drift for a moment into the city beyond your building. Side streets mostly empty now, the occasional set of footsteps passing, leaving a temporary record in the snow before filling in. Steam rising from a manhole cover somewhere down the block, curling up into the cold air and fading. A traffic signal cycling through its colors for no one at all, green to yellow to red and back again, painting small squares of color on the snow at the corner. Then back inside again, to the small world of the bedroom. The bed cradles you, the weight of the blankets, the give of the mattress, the curve of the pillow where your head rests. You picture yourself from above, a quiet shape outlined under the covers, breath rising and falling in a slow, regular rhythm. The room around that shape waits calmly, offering shelter from the night. Somewhere in the periphery of your mind, the seagreen mug stands upright now in your imagination, dry and ready on the counter for some future evening. Not tonight. Tonight its work is done. It only has to be. The brass watch, too, continues its small, steady turning, not concerned with being seen, simply keeping time in the dark. Both objects feel slightly different than they did earlier, one cooler, fully at rest, the other warmer, deep in its own quiet rhythm, but both firmly part of the gentle constellation that makes this space feel like home. The images grow softer at the edges, like drawings smudged with a thumb. Snow, stoops, windows, mug, watch, radiator, bed, all of them cycling past in no particular order, each one offering a brief, friendly nod before carrying you into the next. Between them lies a kind of spaciousness, a quiet in which you can just float. You're not holding on to any single picture now. You're letting them move the way snow moves in the air when there's a bit of wind shifting gently, never quite still, but never hurried. The apartment, the street, the city, the night, all of it becomes one continuous, dim, peaceful backdrop to the simple, central fact of you lying here, warm and safe, breathing in the dark. The radiator's whisper blends with the steady tick of hidden clocks until they feel like one sound, cradling the room. Under the blankets, your body grows heavier and lighter at the same time, held, supported, no longer needing to do anything at all. Breath moves in and out and in again, so quietly it hardly seems to disturb the air. Outside, snow keeps falling on stoops and railings and rooftops, taking care of the night in its own slow way. Inside, in this small, warm room, you rest in the hush, wrapped in gratitude for this space, this quiet, this gentle winter night, and you drift softly into sleep.